Hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Demetrius Colbert TV. Super excited to have you here again. I am back with life coach, Pastor Dr. Mark Jackson. We're here hanging out. I'm super excited to be able to have him here again. Listen, I wanted to also thank those of you way ahead of time who have been looking at our clips, our YouTube shorts. Apparently, they've been feeding you all and giving you some fuel for hope and some steps that you can start to take. But I do want to say this to you. I just want to caution you with this. While Mark and I are absolutely elated to be able to bring those clips to you, I want to tell you that the hard work, though, won't come in a 30-second clip. That's good enough to give you some insight and to be able to help you start going down the pathway. But that 30 seconds is enough for you to think about something, right? To cause you to critically think or maybe push back perhaps on something. But to fully get this, you want to start to do the work that's necessary. So that means that you're either going to need to connect with Mark or myself, and we're going to have the opportunity then to work with you on a longer trajectory that allows you to move forward. I'm not mentioning any kind of price to you. This isn't a sales pitch. This isn't, we're going to give you a free gift and then we'll get you in and then we upsell you to the next thing. I'm just putting it out there to you point blank. The clips are great, but after the clips is where the real work is going to come in. Our goal is, however, it's to provoke you, right? Internally, right? For those of us that are believers in
Yeah.
your spirit, if you will, to be willing to say, I really need to go further than where I'm going now. I heard something that I hadn't heard before, and it's speaking to my destiny, it's speaking to my marriage, it's speaking to my parenting, it's speaking to my occupation, it's speaking to my hopes and my dreams and my visions, all these kind of things. In order for us to be able to really support you, yes, you can look at all of the clips in our long form video, but really it's going to be you working with somebody sitting down with you. Um, and you might say, well, why are you doing, shorts? I'm gonna tell you why I do shorts, because I do think that there are some people that short was enough to push them over into their next phase.
Yeah.
But for most people, I'm going to tell you that it's a start, it's a beginning, it's a light bulb moment for them, for that to be able to come on, and then it allows them to start to think to themselves, okay, wait a minute. There's something deeper here and some deeper work that I need to be able to do in me in order to become the best that God intended for me to be. And so
Yeah.
that's why
Yeah.
we are here. But man,
Yeah.
thank you so much again, Mark. Again, we're up again on a Saturday. We're in two different time zones. I'm all the way in Arizona. He is in Missouri. So it just takes Kansas or Missouri?
Missouri, right
Missouri.
outside Kansas City, Missouri. Yeah.
So we're in some different time zones. And so it makes us have to figure this out here. But anyway, we're back again. And today, Mark and I are going to be talking about, I'm going to give it three titles. So, emotional intelligence, emotional agility, and emotional maturity. Wherever you want to land in there, we're going to kind of go over that here in the next few moments. And once again, hopefully, bring something to you that is impactful for you. But let me tell you why I started down this journey in the first place. So I just want to tell on myself. I started down this because I found that I personally did not have this agility, this maturity, or this intelligence. And I was a reactor to things instead of a responder to things. People who react feel like they got caught off guard and they weren't settled enough. And so they react to things that they hear. Some of that has to do with our identity, who we are, um, excuse me, and how we believe somebody else made us feel. But when you respond, just think of a first responder, if I can help you, an ambulance, if you will. When they get the call, they don't show up and go, we don't know what to do. We're sorry. No, they
Right.
show up because they're a response team. That's because they know what to do when they get into the situation or the circumstance. And this is how I wanted to live, right? So I was like, hey, I have enough information, but I didn't really have enough application. And I hadn't developed myself to the point where I could see something and not react to it. And I understood that that had to do with my emotional intelligence. Now, before somebody says, well, are you saying I'm stupid? No, I'm telling you, I walked through this myself. What I'm trying to
Yeah,
say to you is this is almost like a muscle. It's something you have to build in your life. We have the
absolutely.
capacity, but oftentimes we don't tap into it at the level that we need to tap into it at. And so that's where we really find some struggle and some trouble. Now, before I start asking Mark some questions, Mark, did you have any things in general that you wanted to just share with everybody regarding this topic that you feel was important?
Well, just think, I want us to think about it on the lines of self-mastery and how we are called to be intentionally in the driver's seat in our lives instead of either in the passenger seat, the back seat, or the trunk. And when our emotions, or I mean, you can name any emotion, you can even talk about fear or false beliefs or mindsets. When those are in the driver's seat, then we're subject to where they want to take us.
Mm,
So self mastery comes from self awareness. And when we raise our awareness and start being more intentional,
mhm.
and it's like we're not saying these emotions don't matter. We're not kicking them out of the car. We're just saying, hey, sit beside me in this or ride with me through this, but I can't let you drive. So being in the driver's seat of our own mindset, our own emotions means that they don't take us where we don't want to go.
Mhm.
We ride and experience them while continuing on the journey of where we do want to go.
So I hope you guys got that because that makes sense to me. It's very clear to me. Now, again, if you're looking at this for the very first time or you're watching our long form video here, this what Mark just said might be new to you. For me, I started working on it like 2 years ago. I just said, and I was 53.
Yeah.
So, and I started working on it. So, because sometimes we think that age is automatic wisdom dripper. It's not, right? Because there's stuff you have to unpack, right, Mark? I would say that people have to unpack a lot of this to be able to get there. And I also want to tell you that if you're just starting today, let's say you're 60 and you're watching this, let's say you're 58 and you're watching this, 78 and you're watching this, it's still not too late. 38. It doesn't matter. The
Yeah.
thing is are you willing to do work? I love what Mark said. I don't want to be subject to my emotions, and I want to be in the driver's seat of my emotions. I don't want my emotions to be in the driver's seat, and that's what we want for you. I think about how I grew up, Mark, and I think about a lot of the stuff, man, that happened in regards to people that I saw let their emotions get the best of them, and they're no longer here.
Yeah.
Only because they're unalived. Only because their emotions got the best of them, right? They couldn't control themselves, or they're incarcerated, or
Right.
they stayed in a cycle
Yeah.
of embracing those emotions, which never allowed them to flourish as people. Or I watch people who can't keep jobs, Mark,
Mm.
who can't stay employed, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they blow up at everybody. It's everybody else's fault all the time. And so I see a lot of that. So that's the first question that I actually want to ask is this is like, how does emotional intelligence impact um, our leadership effectiveness in like high pressure situations, like, and just our overall life? How does emotional intelligence impact us in stressful situations?
Um, well, I would say, first of all, understanding what it means to be emotionally intelligent is the awareness that I have strong emotions of any type that will really start to impact how I'm thinking and processing. Um, Maybe if we have time, I'll tell you why I found this so amazing. I was doing a devotional on human emotions,
Mm,
gave a scientific fact. Here was the fact: that our emotions travel 80,000 times faster than our thoughts.
Wow.
Now, I first of all think about how fast my thoughts can go, and to think that our emotions scientifically have been found to travel 80,000 times faster than our thoughts. So, emotional intelligence is just being aware of where I am and how it is either helping me
Mm,
or how I need to process it in a way that um, doesn't hijack me. So, that in normal situations as a leader is important to navigate and not the easiest without tools and self mastery. How much more in high pressure situations? So I said this years and years ago. I was in a situation and I just said, if you want to find out what's in you, just jump in the middle of something and get squeezed. Now,
yeah.
because so the good's going to come out, but also some ugly is going to come out.
Yeah.
And when it does, it's really a great time to rejoice because the fact that it came out of you makes you aware that it's in you,
Mm,
gives you an opportunity to address it with healthy self confrontation.
yeah.
So, uh, the greater the pressure, the more our focus on the right outcomes
Hmm.
is crucial. In fact, I'm reading a wonderful book right now called Crucial Conversations.
Mm,
And it says crucial conversations are when there are high emotions, important things to address, and important outcomes.
mm.
So that's what turns something into a crucial conversation. And at that moment when we need to be our best, we are often at our worst. So emotional intelligence is just being aware that I need to be in this situation as healthy as I can be. And without some tools and some processes, I might show up the opposite and then end up with outcomes that I don't want.
So I'm reading this book from this lady called she's talking about um adult children of emotionally immature parents.
Mm,
And she says this is Dr. Lindsay Gibson, and here's what she says. She says emotionally immature people don't step back and think about how their behavior impacts others. There's no cringe factor for them, so they seldom apologize or experience regret. And I'm thinking about what you said, and that particular quote popped up to me because that's exactly what happens, right? We show up as our at our worst in those moments and not necessarily at our best in those moments. And there's something else that is going on the inside of us, right? Somewhere, we just talked about this a couple of weeks ago, somewhere there's maybe an offense in us that we still want to hold on to. That offense is really responding, right? More
yeah,
than maybe even because we might even have the knowledge, Mark, but our offense is the one that's responding because we haven't either dealt with it, right, or
yeah.
we feel some kind of way about it still. So
Yeah, I'm responding out of my wounds. I'm responding out of my traumas instead of responding out of what the situation calls for. And watch this one, even what's best for me. So
mm,
here's how we can look at it just real quickly
sure, take your time.
is all of us are sending and receiving information to one another. Hope we can see that there,
See
right?
it for sure, yeah.
So now be nice because I send it and you see there's no interference. And when
Mm,
it gets to you, there's no interference.
mm,
Unfortunately, before it gets to one another, we could look at it like this. I sent it but it's quite possible that I sent it through my filter,
Hmm.
which means no matter how well meaning I was, even as it came out of me, it was convoluted, messed up, diminished, tainted, if you will, by my filter, my upset, my perception, my anger, my agitation, whatever those, all those things, right? And watch this, before it gets to you, no matter if mine was clear,
Uh-huh.
if
Mm-hmm.
it came as pure, no nastiness, no misunderstanding coming out of me, before it gets to you, you hear it through your filter.
Mm-hmm.
And your filter might be junked up with wounds, childhood traumas, misinterpretations of yourself, a negative self image, self relationship,
Yeah.
victim mode,
Yeah.
offensiveness. So no matter how well intended and well delivered, it got to you, it went through your filter. So emotional intelligence is being aware. I've got things in my filter that are tainting, disrupting, diminishing the things that people say and do with me.
Hmm.
And emotional maturity is I want to get tools and processes that just help this filter get a little bit cleaner, a little bit cleaner, a little bit cleaner, so that I am less likely to misunderstand and then react.
Oof.
I can understand and
Yeah.
respond.
I like that for whatever reason. Of course, I've heard misunderstanding a lot of times, but this is the key too. And part of what you're saying here is that's a large issue for us is misunderstanding.
Yeah.
So, right. And so this is such a broad thing. Let me flip the tables for somebody who's watching and saying, so are you saying that my emotions are not legitimate? Can you speak to that for a moment? Because I also realize that we do have legitimate emotions, but they need to be attached to this maturity or the
Yeah.
process of it in order for us to go forward. So, what would you say to the person who's like, so what am I supposed to do with how I feel? It's legitimate. This
Yeah.
person offended me. I'm offended by what they said. They offended my kid. They offended my hair, my dress, my look. They said something to me that was off color, whatever. What, how do we deal with
Hmm.
whether or not our emotions are legitimate or not?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple things to answer that question. I think about my illustration and the fact that I cannot clean up anybody else's filter. I can only determine how clean the filter through which I receive things is. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Now, unless I do that, I won't have clarity on. Let me back up one sentence and say this. Um, so oftentimes we are misinterpreting and taking or thinking something is about us when it's really about the other person.
Oof.
Yeah.
Yes.
Depending on how they sent it and how I'm interpreting it, before it even becomes a potential external battle, it's going to start an internal battle.
Mm.
And if I don't win that internal battle, I'll fight battles that don't exist. If I don't win
Ooh.
the one internal battle with myself, then I'm going to fight other five, six, seven other battles that only exist because of that internal battle that I haven't addressed.
Mm.
So, that being said, I don't do that by calling my feelings illegitimate or judging my feelings as wrong or bad. In fact, the moment you judge an emotion, you make it more powerful.
Mm,
The moment you assign or label it wrong, bad, sinful, whatever label you want to put on it, the moment you do that, you're essentially saying, my emotions don't matter and I don't deserve to acknowledge them. So we don't judge the emotion. We can just get curious and say, is how I'm feeling about this exchange about them or about me
mm,
or both? And I can't do anything about what it is about them. All I can do is say, why is this about me?
mm-hmm,
What am I hearing that's not being said?
mm-hmm.
And how am I interpreting it from my own emotions? And then I really need to think about this. How do I want to show up in this moment?
Yes.
Okay, let me just soapbox for just a
Yeah,
minute.
absolutely. Go for it. Go for it.
We got some cute isms, especially in our faith walk,
Mm-hmm.
and they just drive me crazy. I'm a Christian, but I cuss a little bit. And then this one, I'm a Christian, but don't test me.
Mm-hmm.
What you're basically saying is, I'm way more carnal than I am spirit led.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm setting either long fuse or a short fuse on how much you can play with me.
Mm,
So, really, if I were to just riff here and interpret that sentence, what you're saying is, I'm pretty carnal and don't test me because I only believe scripture to the degree that I am comfortable subduing my own flesh. And because I'm not interested in training myself to have gentleness, self-control, patience, three of the nine fruit of the spirit, if I'm not regulating and challenging myself to grow in those areas, I'm basically saying, you got a real short fuse with me, and you're going to see me be everything but a believer, if you will.
mhm,
Let me just okay. So that being said, I'm unable to help my children if my children are disrespected, my wife or others that are just witnessing this. I'm unable to help them if I first don't recognize I'm missing the chance to teach them, hey, this is what happens when we're hangry. This is what happens when we are defensive or wounded, or if we're not healed from feeling like we're being taken advantage of. Because I need to know when it is legitimate and when it's not legitimate so I can lean into it with wisdom and healthy confrontation. Let me give you an example. The boss says something, but they put a little meanness or a little sarcasm on there. And if I'm not emotionally intelligent, then I'm leaving wounded. Dang, do they not want me here? Am I about to get wrote up? And then if they schedule a meeting, I'm thinking, do I need to take an empty box to this meeting because I'm getting ready to get fired? So I'm misinterpreting a lot of those things. But when I am growing in my maturity, I recognize, maybe that boss just doesn't have good communication skills, or they're under a high pressure situation, so they're not putting the necessary or the very helpful politeness. So I've got to first be aware, and then I've got to make some decisions. If I follow this emotion, what fruit will it produce? But if I were not experiencing this emotion, how might I respond to this situation?
So, man, again, so good. Listen, so I've been working on a couple of things, and actually, I posted this yesterday or the day before. Just because I'm saved, I still don't like what I didn't like before I was saved,
Yeah,
but I cease to be at war with the things that I don't like, so that true peace, right,
yeah,
can actually be mine.
yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah,
See?
absolutely.
So I s- I don't like them, and my faith didn't change me. So for the believer out there who's like, well, I just don't like anybody to play me. I don't want to be played either.
Right.
I still don't like it. But the question is, and correct me if I'm wrong, because this is what I felt like I was hearing you say. Do I have to be at war with that? Um, when God hasn't called me to be at war with that. And if I'm not at war with that, then I actually have access to true peace and the emotional agility to be able to see the circumstance for what it is and the self awareness, right? To say, oh, this is something that would have triggered me in the past, but I understand where it's coming from. And I understand, as you had alluded to in there, this might be about the other person and not even really about me. There could be something going on in them and so on and so forth. And so now undoubtedly there's going to be somebody who's like, well, when do you say something to that person? So um uh when Mark and do you need to say something to that person who maybe you feel offended by, and is that part of the process of being able to be emotionally mature?
Yes, absolutely. So the first thing I will say to answer all of this is there's a very popular ism. I don't even know where it came from, but it could not be more true. Your new life is going to cost you your old one.
Mm,
What does that mean? That means whatever you used to hang on to or hold on
like
to,
that.
it's hard sometimes to give that up,
Hmm.
especially the ability to defend yourself. Now, we've got principles that say, hey, be still and let the Lord fight your battle. Most of us say, well, God, you got about 3.2 seconds. If I don't see
Right.
you fighting the battle in the
Yeah.
way I think,
Yeah.
meaning fire comes down from heaven or their heads come off or boils break out over their skin. If I don't see that within my expected time frame, then I'm taking over and fighting my own battle.
Hmm.
So here's the thing. It comes at a price. My peace comes at a price, and the only one who pays that price is me. So when I am interested in preserving my peace, there's a song by Lecrae that talks about preserving my peace. I can't remember all the details, but it's when I prioritize my peace, then I'm the one who pays the price to preserve it. That price is my pride, my ego, and sometimes a sense of whether I win or lose. Now, if I throw a knockout punch in the wrong fight, that's not a win, that's a loss.
That's really
So,
good.
yeah. So that being said, the question becomes, do I have to fight this battle? And I can't wait to answer the last part of your question.
Sure. Sure.
What will this battle cost me?
Hmm.
And if I fight the wrong battles, how will I lose the
I like
war?
that. I
I'll
like
end up
that.
losing the war because I fell for and was tempted by the wrong battle. That's a warfare strategy. Hey, let's send troops over here, inviting them to turn all of their attention this way, and while their backs are turned, now that's spiritual more than it even is natural war. While their backs are turned because they're focused on the distraction, then we're going to run into that camp and annihilate them.
Yeah.
So that being said, the last part of it is um, the when do I say something is not as important, but it is very important as how will I say something
Mm.
when I do say something. First of
Makes
all,
sense.
if I'm not able to stay emotionally clear,
Hmm.
even if I start hearing and getting responses that are not ideal for healthy communication, um, if I'm not ready, then okay, I got to tell the story.
Yeah. Yeah. Go for it.
6 years ago, I was in Chipotle. I was driving for Uber and Lyft, launching my coaching practice, and it was getting slow. So I was like, I'm going to go get a burrito and go home and put on some Teddy Pendergrass. I waited all day long. That's me at
Just
Chipotle.
to hold you.
Yes, that's me at Chipotle. So I asked for the burrito like I always do, and then they move it to the side for the toppings. Young lady comes from the back, and there's onions and peppers, and I always like the onions. I'm not crazy about the peppers, and I always ask it this way. Uh, you don't have to take a lot of time. I know there's people behind me. Can you just grab me a few of those onions out of the onions and peppers mix? They always do it, except that day. We can't do all that. Well, what she said is, we can't do that. I said, really? I said, well, I've never had a Chipotle tell me I couldn't have some onions out of there. So the young lady over here leans over. She says, what's going on? And that's when she got, what do the young folks say now? She crashed out. No, onions and peppers is all cooked down in there. He want onions out of there. I can't do all that. And threw my burrito to the side and walked away. So for my first reaction was, well, y'all tell her she need to take that attitude to Burger King. That is not a Chipotle attitude. Now, remember that I said this was fall of 2019. This
Yeah.
was not fall of 2009 or 1999. This was 2019. I was already an ordained minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ for a long time, a pastor of a church, and a life coach with clients all around the world. So I start yelling at her, excuse me, you need to take that attitude to Burger King. That is not. So let me get back to getting my burrito. So as the lady's wrapping my burrito, it's like I had a slow motion flashback to when she threw my burrito to the side and one of my little chicken cubes rolled off the tortilla. I don't know if I can cuss on here or not, so I'm not going. But this is exactly what I said. I'll let you fill in the blank. I screamed at this young lady, and don't you ever throw my food again. You throw my burrito again, I will body slam your rear end. In the moment, I did not say rear end, Pastor D. I did not. And so the girls
I feel you. I feel you.
I'm seeing red, and they give me my burrito. I pay. I'm driving down the road, face crunched up. Nasty attitude. Right? And all of a sudden, I busted out laughing. And I said, I just levied a threat of violence on a woman over a burrito.
I feel you. I feel you.
So, needless to say, that was my reaction, not my response. It saddens me legitimately what other little black boys, little white girls, little Hispanic kids were in that restaurant looking at their mom and dad like, do we need to leave? Like, what's wrong with that man?
Yeah.
Right. And so what an example I wasn't. Right. And like I said, you get into something and get squeezed. So I'm grateful that that came up out of me because it was letting me know, hey, you got some emotional dysregulation.
Man.
Yep. So it was a growth opportunity. And so I said, as I'm laughing, driving down the street, next time I'm in that area, I got to go back and I got to apologize. Now, here's my point, why I brought it up. I'm ready to apologize, I think, because, and I went back, but she wasn't there. I haven't been in that area since. But when I go to apologize, hey, you know what? Last time I saw you, I was way out of character. You threw my burrito and I threatened you. And I want to tell you I'm sorry. Now, listen to me if you're watching this. If I say I apologize or I'm sorry, and I'm waiting those 3 seconds because I'm expecting an apology back, I did not go for the right reasons.
Apology.
Right? If I apologize and I'm waiting for her to say, you know what, I didn't have any business, I'm sorry too. And then if she don't say it, I'm ready to take my apology back or go there. See, I knew I should have body slammed you that night, right? Especially if her reaction is, well, it took you long enough. Yeah. She was not small, so I would have had to eat that burrito first in order to be strong. Give me. Right? So, yeah, look, now y'all know I'm just a clown. Okay. And I'm just a redeemed hot mess, y'all. But it was a growth opportunity. But what if her response was, well, it took you long enough. You know, you should have came back right in. We shouldn't have gave you, you know what? Right. So if I'm not ready, then my outcome depends on her reaction.
Sure.
So
Absolutely.
he'll answer your question. You can't ask a pastor a question 30 minutes later. He's
Oh,
going to
you're
answer.
good. You're good.
So here's the thing. I must first be willing to just be in the environment where their response to what I need to address goes further into their emotional
Mm,
dysregulation
mm,
or habits of defensiveness, goes further into what they do because of their, junked up filter,
sure.
right?
Sure. Yeah.
But ultimately, the sooner I do it, the better, because if it festers, then it becomes this little seed that gets just that much bigger. That next thing you know, it's a full blown tumor
Mm,
inside of me
hmm.
where not them, somebody just completely different, unrelated to it, catches it because I'm harboring this offense and this upset. And
Mm,
especially if I'm afraid to say something to them because they're my boss or because they're someone that's closest to me. So I've got to grow that emotional maturity so I can have the right approach. In other words, how to say something. And then that will help lead me to when to say something. And the sooner the better so it doesn't fester or become a problem. And the approach is just, hey, I interpreted something some way and I want to own how I might be feeling about this, but tell me what you meant when you said blah, blah, blah. And
sure.
Mel Robbins, I don't know if you follow much of
I
Mel Robbins.
do. I do.
She said this that when people, I'm gonna say it real casual here, when people talk slick or they say these jabs or whatever, said the best thing you can do is just ask them to repeat it. Hey, would you say that again? So
That's good.
when instead of responding with a comment or a jab back at them, you just say, "Can you clarify that? What do you mean by that statement?" So they've said things to her like, "Oh, it must be nice for your husband. You make all this money, he can just sit around and do nothing," or whatever little slide things they kind of say to people.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We hear them
Mm-hmm.
all the time. So instead of, what you say, blah blah blah. Instead of reacting, you say, "Could you repeat that? Can you tell me what you mean by this statement?" You can do that to anybody in the moment, especially if you're ready to just get
I like
more
that.
understanding on their intent. And what do? We judge others by their actions. We judge ourselves by our intent. Well,
That's interesting.
that's not what I meant. That's not what I was trying to say. So we want to be judged on what we intended, but we're judging and reacting to others by their actions. So we got to just be willing to say, well, I'm not sure the intent here. So let me ask some questions so that'll become clear. Most of the time, the people who are speaking to you in inappropriate ways. They say, "Oh, I was just kidding." They're like, no, no. What did you mean by the comment, though? Where did that come from?
Yeah.
Well, I guess, and so now they've got to kind of back out or explain away.
Mm-hmm.
And watch this. If you do that two or three times, you're training them. They will knock that off.
True.
They will
True.
stop because they know every time I try to say something subversive or slick or underhanded, they just call me to the carpet to stand on what I just said. And I don't like that because of my emotional immaturity,
Right.
my filters, and all of that good stuff. So responding as clear as you possibly can and as quickly as you can with the goal of clarifying meaning and intent so that you know more where this person is coming from, understand more the filter through which they send information,
Mm-hmm.
and perhaps even inviting them to start changing that for the good of the objective, for the overall health of communication with you.
So there's three things that I want to say here to everybody with the stuff that Mark just shared with us. Three thoughts that I want to have. But first, I want to give you this quote from Susan David, who is also a therapist. Um, who wrote a book called Emotional Agility. This is her quote about tough situations. She said, "The most effective way to transform your life is not by quitting your job because there's a problem or by moving to Ashram because there's a problem, but to paraphrase Teddy Roosevelt, by doing what you can with what you have where you are." So the
Mm.
Chipotle situation came to mind, and that quote came to mind when you were talking about Chipotle, because I had that quote there, and I thought that that made so much sense. So sometimes our thing is I just need to get away from this situation as quick as possible, or this person is just terrible. But again, it
Yeah.
comes back to a self-awareness place and emotional ability that we would have. And it says here, do what you can with what you have where you are. But that requires that, again, you are self-aware and that you are moving in emotional intelligence, right? In a space, because now you're saying, wait a minute, the question that you just talked about with Mel Robbins, which I think is fantastic. Can you tell me what you mean by that, right? You, because that catches somebody off guard too, especially if they want you to just have a visceral reaction to what they're
Yeah.
saying, which is typically what it is. They're trying to get a response, a reaction out of you, and this is a response to what they
Yeah.
said, right? That's a more emotionally intelligent response because now you're prepared for it, where you catch yourself and you say, "Oh, wait a minute, can you say that again?" And then you keep going down the pathway. So, what exactly do you mean by that, right? You're pulling this out of this person so they can see how ignorant things are. The second thing I want to share with you all is this. Social media and people like Mark and myself, who are pastors and coaches and people of influence, and in the spheres that God has given us influence in, are oftentimes you could view us behind this lens and you'll see this pass by your page or whatever, whatnot. And you're thinking, man, I wonder how those guys got to where they are. What I love um, that Mark just did was he told you this scenario about Chipotle. We have to get away from this ideal that just because we have information and knowledge, and just because we're teaching it, that we actually haven't experienced it ourselves. In fact, I believe that's one of the qualifiers for being able to go through these things is that we walk through them ourselves. We're just
Yeah.
as human as you are. I've raised my voice at
Yeah.
my wife, at my kids. I've said things that I had to in turn be like, hey, that's not okay. And in fact, Mark, one of the things that, which is the third thing I wanted to say was that I've said things to people that I actually love, that
Oh,
I love, that
oh yeah.
I would never set out to intentionally harm in any way, shape, or form. That's it would never be in my mind to say, I'm gonna deal with you like I'm dealing with somebody who I don't know. Right?
Or even way more intense than we would with a perfect stranger. Now,
Absolutely.
keep going, but I will say this: the closer the relationship, the more likely it is, because strangers don't wound us like the people closest to
So
us.
true. So true.
And we also have an unspoken expectation because this person is so close to me,
Right.
supposed to know what I'm thinking, know what I'm feeling, and never do the things that are making me react that way. So
Right.
please continue. But often it's that the closer they are, the more wounded we are by these kind of exchanges or encounters.
I
Please.
100% agree, right? Because you do have the unspoken expectation, hey, this person's going to care for me, and so we're not going to go down this pathway, right? That's not going to be the way that we move. That's not going to be the kind of spirit slash energy that we move with, right, towards
Mhm.
one another. But I certainly have, and I've had to go back and apologize
Oh, yeah.
for things, and I had to admit that I was being immature. These were hard things, but I'm gonna tell you, Mark, they were freedom type things, right? I could feel, that song Tasha Cobbs sings, uh Break Every Chain. I
Oh,
could
yeah.
literally feel chains uh, um coming off of me because I was able to say that was a very immature moment for me. And I was feeling some kind of way. And I know I'm responsible for my feelings,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And there's freedom in that. So if
yeah.
you're listening to this, and Mark, I'll let you get to your thought. If you're
Please.
listening to this, I just want you to know there's freedom in recognizing that emotionally you may not be exactly where you want to be, and that you might be moving in more of a immature way than you are in the way. Watch this, even that you see yourself, which is a beautiful thing because I
Mhm.
saw myself in a certain way, and then the other part of me really showed up, right? That part of me that I
Oh,
thought
yeah.
that I
Yeah.
had prayed out, that I had
Uh-huh.
fasted out, that I
Yeah.
had worded out, right? That I had churched
Hmm.
out, shouted out.
Right.
That part, hey, it was resurrecting
Oh,
in
yeah.
there. And to Mark's point earlier, is like, hey, we get to realize how much we really have submitted our heart
Hmm.
um to God in this place to be able to see it. And so, but real submission in many instances is the acknowledgement of the fact that there's an issue,
Yeah.
and not just acting. This is and so this is my thing. Even being a church boy, pastor, Christian. Here's a challenge that I do have with the church. So y'all bear with me. I'm gonna try to explain this to the best of my ability, um, as brief as I can. When we don't talk about process in church, I've seen people shout over something because they hoped in that moment and because the atmosphere.
Yes.
But I believe the majority of those times, it's a beginning of something.
Yes.
It's a,
Absolutely.
it is a beginning. I'll be brief because we're gonna close up in like 15 minutes. But listen, I see this pattern in the text that God speaks to Abraham in Genesis 12. And he says to Abraham, he says, leave your mom, leave your home, your family, your culture, leave everything. Watch this, to a place that I'll show you.
Hmm.
The initial thing was, I have something to show you, but you have to leave. So you aren't going to leave tomorrow and get there the next day.
Right.
I'm going to show it to you as you are journeying on the process, in this process. We have a tendency to believe that in that moment, even if God spoke, even in that moment, you're more than likely just entering into a process, and
Oh,
not necessarily an instantaneous thing, right? So
yeah.
so God tells Abraham, listen, leave, go to a place that I will show you. Now, the Bible says that Abraham left, and the reality of it is God was saying, just keep going, and when it's there, I'm going to show you where it is. Last one, King David. God hasn't chosen Saul; the people did,
Right.
but God sent His prophet to David's house to check for his new king.
Yeah.
Understand something. The prophet gets to David's father, Jesse. Jesse is not thinking about David,
Mm-mm.
but David, watch this. David has been in process for years,
Yeah.
several at least, because for all intent and purposes, theologians believe he was still a teenager, but he's
Yeah.
been in process for years. So David has these private victories, a
Oh, yeah.
lion, a
Uh-huh.
bear, and then he has a coming out party,
Yeah.
Goliath, right? It's so interesting that he also, though, experienced God not being known, even by the people who were closely connected to him. But David knew what was in him
Yeah.
because he's the one who made mention of the fact, I killed a lion and a bear. But
Yeah.
two things, David walked through rejection from the people who were supposed to accept him and acknowledge him,
Yes.
his own father.
Yeah.
And then the prophet comes. And he knows, but his first choice was to choose David's oldest brother. He's like, because he
Hmm.
looks the part, right?
Yeah.
Never having seen David. And
Right.
God says, I'm looking for the heart of the man,
Right.
not the outward appearance.
Yeah.
So he walks through he walks through victories, then he walks through rejection,
Yeah.
right? And then Mark, not only does he go through that process, then he goes out and he has this great victory, right?
Yeah.
So God is teaching him also too how to shepherd people by shepherding sheep.
Yeah.
Because God's whole intent, hear me, God's whole intent is for him to be a king. But God is using him in a process
Yeah.
to bring him to that place. Last thing I want to say, because this is an oversight in the text, David kills Goliath. Everybody shouts and hollers at him. But in the process, David learned something. Saul wanted David to wear his armor.
Yeah.
And David was like, that is not for me. That is for you. So
Yeah.
David is learning all of these lessons in the process.
Yeah.
So he goes, he has this battle, this victory. And immediately after the victory, y'all, what does God do? Now understand something, because this is the thing I need you to hear. David is anointed by
Yeah.
God. This has happened in front of his father and his brothers. The man of God, you are the man.
Yeah. Yeah.
He anoints him. You're the king. God, after the lion and the bear in private, shepherding the sheep, coming out, being rejected by his own father, then going and having a great victory, comes out of this great victory, and God sends David to Saul,
Yeah.
an unrighteous king who attempts to kill him at least a dozen times.
Yeah. Yeah.
David,
Amazing.
David is learning, watch this, from an unrighteous king how to be a righteous king
Yeah.
by God putting him under an unrighteous king.
So good.
He's anointed the whole time
Yeah.
to be the king. How do we know David is learning? Because two times, Mark, David had the opportunity to kill Saul.
Yeah.
Both times he did not. The
Hmm.
last time he even lifts up a
Yeah.
piece of his garment and says, look, I'm not trying to kill you, but I could have while
Yeah.
you were taking a leak. I could
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
God is teaching David through this whole process. So here's what I want to say. The moment that you hear it might not be the moment that it all comes together.
Right.
You
Mm.
will go through process,
Yeah.
right? And
Hmm.
progress before all of a sudden you're just there. So
Yeah.
part of it is yielding yourself
Yeah.
to the process, Mark, is the way that I see it. I feel
Yeah.
like far too many people, I feel like far too many people, they get something and then they just run with it. I got delivered. You entered into deliverance. As far
Right.
as as
Come
far as I'm
on.
concerned, as far as I'm concerned. But
Oh,
now it's the working out of these
yes.
things. And those two examples, I have so many more, but those two examples,
Yeah.
right, are the two examples because I can go to Hannah.
Hmm.
I can go to she cried for this baby, right?
Yes.
I can go
Hmm.
to Ruth
Yeah.
and Naomi. Your people be my people. Where you go, I'll go. This was a process. Hey, she submitted herself to her mother-in-law. Her mother-in-law told her what to do,
Yeah.
right? And in the process, watch this, Boaz recognizing it, he didn't leave her from the field. She stayed in the field, but she found, okay, I'm about to preach a message.
Yeah.
So let me stop. Because she
Yeah.
found favor in the field.
Yes.
She was still in process with the promise attached to it by following.
Absolutely.
Okay, so all right,
Yeah.
Mark, I'm gonna go ahead. Go ahead. You
Oh,
had a thought.
yeah. But here's the thing, that promise and the journey to it is so crucial. And I'm going to use this example. Finally, Pharaoh has had it. These crazy people's God has killed all of the firstborn
Mm,
male. Okay, y'all been begging to leave. Your messenger's been telling me that God said to let y'all go. Get out of here. Loaded them up with gold and silver. And God got Israel out of slavery in a moment,
Instantly. Yes.
in an event. So getting them out of slavery, delivering them, happened in a moment.
Yes, sir.
Then it took 40 years. In a moment, he got slavery out of them. Took 40 years to got them out of slavery. Took 40 years to get the slavery out of them.
Come on.
In a moment, they escape the literal, natural slavery, but their hearts and minds had to go through a process of getting the slave mentality out of them. So, what does that mean for us on this episode? These moments of awareness, these moments of emotional and spiritual acknowledgments can rip us out of the emotional difficulties or baggage in a moment. But God's goal and our journey as humans is then to go through the process of getting whatever that was out of us, out of our belief system, out of our natural or habitual patterns. Joe Dispenza, Dr. Joe Dispenza says it best. He says, nerve endings that fire together, wire together.
Mm.
So we have these automatic programmed responses that don't just vanish because we had an emotional experience or an event where we were finally sick of it. So here's the tools I want everybody to kind of walk away with.
Good.
Number one, stop judging yourself, beating yourself up, guilting and shaming yourself. Get curious. First curiosity, what are my patterns? And what are the things and situations that trigger or activate those patterns in me that I'm ready to start living outside of those things, right?
Mm.
So what are the patterns? And how do I want to show up instead of how I'm showing up? Now, that was key, and here's why. Not wanting to be angry will put me anywhere else. Wanting to be at peace and calm gives me a target to pursue. And in fact, with our human brain, it doesn't register the negative. I'm not going to snap on these kids. I'm not going to snap on these kids. It only conjures up the image, snapping on these kids. So I said all day I wasn't going to, and then I'm in the middle of snapping on these kids, having this out-of-body experience like, I said I wasn't going to do that. Well, the only thing you gave yourself to focus on was what you don't want. And we don't always get what we want. We don't always get what we wish for, but we do always get what we focus on. So instead, it's, I'm going to stay calm.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask these kids calmly, why is that laundry that I asked you 3 days ago to pick up, why is it still over there? And then say, would you please get that, right? Instead of, I done told you, all the ways we don't want to keep showing up. So what are my patterns? How do I want to show up? Now, here's a good one for you. What will it be like when I do show up that way?
Man.
And listen, close your eyes, picture it, feel it in your bone marrow. What will it be like if I show up calm, self-regulated, even keeled, focused on successful outcomes? What would that be like for me? And literally, if you can have it before you have it, you can have it. And what you're doing is you're creating neural pathways in the direction you want to go. Dr. Caroline Leaf calls it changing your mind to change your brain to change your life. You can use your mind to change your brain. And your brain starts creating imagery. I say, I'm going to stay calm. My brain pictures me calm and creates a connection there. So now I'm pulling myself into that future state of being. So that when the future becomes the present, I show up the way I want to instead of just trying to fight the way I don't. That comes through. Listen to me. Don't short circuit when I say this, people. Self curiosity,
Mm,
self compassion,
mm.
self kindness, self patience, self encouragement. When was the last time you were just kind to yourself?
Right.
Reason we have these external things is because we're so hard on ourselves, guilt,
Right.
shame, condemnation, judgment. So put the bat down. Stop beating yourself up mercilessly. Just get curious, self compassion, self kindness, self support, becoming the number one person in your corner. I'll stop there, but it's so crucial that you use these tools because if you make it your waking obsession to just live in your imagination and heart, the desired state of being that you want to live in, you're going to pull yourself in that direction instead of just trying to snatch yourself out of the direction you don't want to go. All right, Pastor D, Big DC, man, just take us home with this, man.
No, no. Everything. Okay. I hope everybody got what Mark just said. This has kind of been my whole journey thus far, like the last 24 months. This has been my whole journey.
Yeah.
This question, right, is here. Actually, I can't get to it. Wait a minute. Maybe I can. This was my a part of where I have been going here.
Yes, sir.
I everything you just said is kind of where I am. I have these four things here. I had them on some paper, but my house cleaners were here yesterday, and so I moved all of it. And I'm sitting here, so I can't get up. But this is what I asked myself. The primary thing that I asked myself that I want you guys to hear what Mark just said is, how do I want to show up?
Yeah.
Seriously, how do I want to show up? What does that look like? And what would it look like when I do show up as that person, right?
Yeah.
And let me expand on that for just a moment. That means in my marriage of 32 years, that means with my adult children
Oh,
and
yeah.
with my grandchildren now, right? So that I have. I'm now asking myself, well, how do I want to show up? You know what I did, Mark? Not this summer, but the summer before last, our entire family goes on vacation. Everybody,
Yeah.
kids, their husbands, our grandkids, everybody. We rent a house in California, and everybody goes. I pulled my girls aside and I sat with them and I said, because I'm in this process, I had just started this process, and I said, if there's anything that I have done to you
Mm-hmm.
that you felt like stunted you, kept you down, didn't support you, or whatever, whatnot, I can't fix it, but I want to hear it because I do want to address it. I do want to apologize to you about
Yeah.
it. And my apology is not coming from a place of an excuse, it's
Right.
coming from a place of acknowledgement.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was such a huge thing because I wanted to be able to show up with them having acknowledged maybe something that they might have been carrying,
Yeah.
right? That I inflicted
Yeah.
on them. So I try to do the same thing with my wife as well now, right? About things. And I look back at it, I was like, hey, I probably wasn't at my best in that moment. And for that, I just owe you an apology. I didn't show up for you the way that, watch this, I know that I needed to and wanted to show up in
Yeah.
that moment. So I feel like that's really important. And there's four things, but that's the one I'm gonna end with for there, Mark, because that what you just said is so profound for me. Is how do I want to show up, which is the thing now for me at the age and the phase of my life that I'm in is how do I want to show up? What does that look like? And I believe that God has given me the ability to do that, right? Hey, how do I want to show up? And
Yeah.
so I think that's important.
Yeah. These are the ways that he puts us in the refiner's fire
Hmm.
so that the dross and the impurities come to the surface so that he can schlepp them off, making us more in his image and likeness. And he's not going to stop
Yeah.
until when he looks in that silver, he sees his reflection.
Yeah.
And here's the thing you did, sir. And I pray everybody on this that's watching this will do the same. You gave your adult children and your wife, you gave them a precious gift
Mm.
of just owning it and acknowledging it and stopping with complete sentences, not, well, and, if I did that, I'm sorry, but,
There was no buts.
or I'm sorry because, but just, I am sorry that is not the way I wanted to show up. So you gave them an amazing gift, but sir, when we do this, we give ourselves a gift. You gave yourself a tremendous gift because when we don't do that, we get into self deception and we then are trying to force ourselves to believe a lie or a false image about ourselves or a justification.
True.
And that just keeps us stuck.
Mm.
So when we own it, we become more transparent with ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's a very powerful exchange of self love, self healing, self acknowledgement. And then we go from being ashamed that these things happen
Right.
to being glad that they happen.
Right.
And instead of wanting to hide them or hope nobody knows about it, we can get on a podcast and just admit it.
Man, and just put it out there. Just let it be known.
Because we want our lives to be an example, not of perfection,
Right.
but of vulnerability
And
and what
process.
it's like. And listen, you and I both got somewhere to be. We're going to close up here, but my next mistake might be waiting for me in 30 seconds.
This is true. This
I pray
is true.
that's not the case, but if so, good.
I
Because
want
that's
you,
showing me another place where I get to grow.
yeah, and I want you to use these last 30 seconds to answer this one question here that I wanted to make sure that we got this out here. So if you can take 30 seconds
Yeah.
and answer this would be great. Can emotional intelligence be developed?
Yeah. Yeah. It can be developed and improved when we just take the time to reflect. What way was it not good? What would make it good? And what am I willing to do my part of making it good? If it was good, but I wanted it to be great, what would I have done differently or how would I like to show up in order to do it differently next time? And here's a great thing to ask ourselves. Self-criticism says, what how would I say it? What am I good for? Is self-criticism. Man, I blew
Mm.
it again. What am I good for? Curiosity says, what's good for me? What do I need? What did I need in that moment? How would I like to show up? And what do I need in terms of my own healing and my own growth? So when we do that, and here's how that comes with gut level honesty, when I'm willing to admit to myself, I went to pray some old King James prayer years ago, and I'm so sick of hearing all of them these and thous and knowing my flesh was plotting. One of the most powerful prayers I ever prayed, Pastor D, is God, I need you to save me from myself.
Man, believe it or not, I've actually prayed that prayer before. So,
And
yes,
that's
and amen.
self awareness, self honesty, gut level self honesty. And what a great starting point, because from that, great things start to happen. When I'm no longer willing to deceive myself,
That's the key.
explain away, freedom is right around the corner.
Hear what Mark said, and we're going to get out of your face. When you are no longer willing to deceive yourself. I was walking in a level of self-deception because I thought I was somewhere. Watch this. I even had language for where I thought I was.
Oh, it
Right?
hurts.
Like
Yeah.
I had a look, I had a demeanor where I thought that I was. And then I was like, wait a minute. You know who you are.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
who you are, right? Listen, um, stay curious. One
Yeah.
of the things that really started growing my faith and my journey through my faith with God was staying curious, Mark. I just got curious about all the other things that God also had, understanding the standard things that I needed to do for my faith, but I started genuinely growing when I got curious. So what Mark said about curiosity, I want you to do that. Now, if you guys want to work with Mark, I want to tell you, you need to catch up with him. All of his information will be connected here. His where to follow him, his website and email address for you to be able to connect with him at Forward Leading. All right. I'm grateful for Mark. Um, we just have history, and we've had this is our third conversation. There will be a fourth one, and we have just continued on this because you're responding to it again. I told you in the early part of the video, thank you for responding to it and connecting with it. And I see the saves and the likes and things along those lines. So it's helping you.
Yeah.
But you need the additional work, whether that's with Mark or myself. It does not matter. You can connect with me at demetriuscolbert.com. You can also catch up with me at the Dig for my ministry, my primarily mostly ministry stuff. That's 2G's, the DIGG.org. You can catch me at the digministries.org and get all of my other additional information, including my websites. I just am about to, in 32 days, start a brand new adult Bible study called Belonging Life. Super excited about Belonging Life. Belonging Life is starting to gain some traction and get some ground, because I want to have not only these conversations with Mark. Doesn't know he's going to be in on video with us one night and teach us some stuff over there. He just doesn't know it yet, but I'm letting him know. So we're gonna have many people teaching. It's a teaching ministry, and that is our focus, is to teach people. And so we're excited about being able to bring that to you all as well. And then in my next episode that is coming up, I have a gentleman that I found, Dr. James Tour, who is the CEO of JesusandScience.org. Check him out. Incredible guy. JesusandScience.org. He's a mathematician. He's all these kind of real fancy names I wouldn't know. And I've been fortunate. I reach out to a lot of people who probably would think to see me and my little old channel. Maybe, maybe not. But he said yes. So myself and Dr. James Tour are going to be on, and I'm going to talk to him about science and Jesus. It's going to be an awesome opportunity to hang out. So again, you can catch me on both channels. Okay, you can catch me on Belonging Life channel and here on Demetrius Colbert TV. Mark, how do people get a hold of you as well? Again, just go ahead and put that out there, although it will be in the link.
Be in one of those things you just mentioned and look to your left or right, because I'm going to be right there with my notebook, virtually or in person, taking notes. I can't wait. I just look up stuff when you, please stop mentioning books, by the way, because I keep putting them in my cart and I'm going to be broke and my house going to burn down from all the books in here.
Man, I feel you.
Thank you for being a lifelong learner with me as well.
Likewise.
So you can reach me at Forward Leading. All of my social media is at FWD LEADING, at Forward Leading. Forwardleading.llc is my website. .llc is the actual completion of it. Forwardleading.llc or Mark, M-A-R-C, at forwardleading.llc is my email address. Any way that I can, with my life, serve your life and help you grow to the place that you want to. By the way, please make sure you celebrate even your small victories. If you fail today, 30 times and you win once, don't beat yourself up for the 30 failures. Acknowledge them. You're not trying to do toxic positivity. Acknowledge, own them. But if you win one battle, celebrate it. That's how it becomes 2, 5, 15. Next thing you know, you're winning more than you're losing.
Absolutely.
And you're like, how did I become this person? Through process and one victory at a time. So make sure that you celebrate even the small wins. Acknowledgement and self-honesty is one of them. So anyway, I'm still trying to give you stuff, even though we got to get out of here. But Mark at Forward Leading or forwardleading.llc or at FWDLEADING, any way that my life can serve yours. And by the way, Big D, YES, I don't care what you got going on. You tell me I need to be there. You get my blanket. Yes. Oh, now it's on record now. So it's
It
definitely
is on record.
it's
It is on
definitely
record.
yeah.
Likewise,
Uh,
man.
yes,
Likewise.
sir.
Likewise. I appreciate Mark. Thank you all so much for tuning in with us today. Stay connected. Stay blessed. Talk to you.
Yes, sir.